Hello and good evening, everybody, and I'd like to welcome everyone back tonight to episode 68 of Album Rant. And well, what better place to start than where I left off last time, which is, strangely enough, in the world of Kiss. Now, last time I reviewed their very first live album entitled Alive, but I'm actually going to go a little bit more forward in time to the mid-80s. Now, as I'm sure you know from previous episodes and your own basic knowledge, Kiss was on fire all throughout the mid to late 70s. But then they put out a few questionable albums and members started leaving the band due to disillusionment with the band's direction or with substance abuse problems. But Peter Criss officially left the band in 1980 during the sessions for the Unmasked album. And then later, shortly after, a few years later, Ace Frehley, lead guitarist, would leave the band during the Creatures of the Night sessions. And well, the truth of the matter is, on that Creatures of the Night album, even though Ace Frehley was credited for the album, he did not actually play on it. Instead, he was replaced by session musicians, also called ghost players. Now, Kiss had been doing this for quite a while, actually. I believe this dates back actually to the Destroyer album in the year 1976, where on the song Sweet Pain, Ace Frehley did not actually play on it, so Kiss is no stranger to ghost players. But anyways, like I said, they kind of had various other musicians play what would have been Ace's parts. And one of those musicians was by the name of Vinnie Vincent. No, that is not his real name. That is his stage name. And he actually played on 6 of the 9 tracks on Creatures of the Night. And he actually had a songwriting credit on 3 of the tracks, which were I Love It Loud, I Still Love You, and Killer. Now, he eventually became, well, I guess the official lead guitarist for the tour of Creatures of the Night, and he got his own face paint persona. He was the Ankle Warrior. And for all intents and purposes, and I've said this before on previous episodes, I thought Creatures of the Night was awesome. And I thought Vinnie Vincent was a very good substitute, no pun intended, for Ace Frehley. But after the Creatures of the Night tour, Kiss decided to do the next big money-making move, and they took off the makeup and actually revealed for the first time their actual faces. Now, here's the thing. Vinnie had become an official, well, actually, he was part of the band by this point. He was never actually deemed a official member of the band because he never actually signed the paperwork, but he was considered to be their lead guitarist. Their drummer was Eric Carr, and then, of course, their bassist was Gene Simmons, and their rhythm guitarist was Paul Stanley. So they had this big, momentous event on MTV where they finally revealed their faces. Well, the thing is this, only actually 2 of the 4 main Kiss members were actually quote-unquote unmasked, that being Gene and Paul, as Peter and Ace had already left the band to pursue other endeavors. So they unmasked Eric Carr and they unmasked Vinnie Vincent, who, again, had only played on a few tracks for Creatures of the Night. But then they went on to record their next album, which was their very first album after they had quote-unquote taken off the makeup, and that was entitled Lick It Up. Now, while I did not think that one was quite as good as Creatures of the Night, it was still really, really awesome and still continued down the heavy metal approach that they adopted on Creatures of the Night. But something about it was kind of gearing a little more towards glam rock, at least in comparison to Creatures of the Night, but it was awesome no matter what. And Vinnie Vincent had a writing credit on 8 of the 10 songs. All of them except Fits Like a Glove and Dance All Over Your Face. Both of those were exclusively written by Gene Simmons. And they then embarked on a tour, which again consisted of Gene Simmons, Paul Stanley, Eric Carr, and Vinnie Vincent. And things were not going so well between Vinnie and Paul and Gene. First of all, Vinnie expected a full share of the band's profits, and Gene and Paul were apparently very much against that. So because of that, he refused to sign a contract making him an official member of the band, and that also further annoyed Gene and Paul. They were obviously going to pay him less than what they paid themselves. Second thing, and I have seen YouTube videos of this on the internet, this was something that also caused a lot of division between the band members, is of course, just like Ace Frehley, Vinnie Vincent would have a big guitar solo at some point during the concert. Well, he apparently wanted to play longer than the time allotted, so when his cue came to kind of turn over the center stage to Paul, he would just keep playing and playing and playing. And Paul is just standing there going, will you please stop? We got to start the next song. We're on a schedule here. And it was actually kind of hilarious in hindsight. But again, this caused a lot of turmoil between Paul and Vinnie. And Vinnie was eventually let go and replaced by Mark St. John for the following album. Now, Vinnie took a little bit of time afterwards, and he did a lot of traveling, but unfortunately, he was hospitalized at one point for mental illness, and I don't want to make light of that at all, but it is something that happened. But then he decided to form his own little solo career, which was entitled the Vinnie Vincent Invasion, and he was joined by some other artists named Robert Fleischman on lead vocals, and he actually did have a very brief tenure with Journey of all artists. We had Dana Strum on bass guitar and Bobby Rock on the drums. And they pulled together some demos. Many of these demos that they compiled were actually considered for the Creatures of the Night and Lick It Up albums with Kiss, but never fully materialized, and that basically brings me to the subject of tonight's review, which is the debut album by the Vinnie Vincent Invasion, just entitled Vinnie Vincent Invasion. So we have the cover right there, and then over here on the back we have the members, and I really hate it when they do this. Everything's kind of twisted and at a 90-degree angle and everything. It's kind of obnoxious. I do not know who is who, but I am guessing that is Vinnie right there. But if anyone out there in the comments section would like to educate me about who is who, please feel free to do that. But right there, we have the other members right here. And so it kind of revolves around in a circle at an angle. So yeah, take that for what you will. So anyways, we come to the very first side, and this is side A. And it starts off with Boys Are Gonna Rock. And like I said, this was a song that was based off a demo that was initially used for And on the Eighth Day, which was a song that ended up on Lick It Up. Well, I'm guessing they just took little bits and pieces of that demo, and they still took the same demo and turned it and meshed it into Boys Are Gonna Rock. Now, when this thing first starts, we have a very heavy, very electric guitar intro, and then the thing just starts exploding, and we have got such a killer riff and rhythm. It goes dun-dun-dun-dun, 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 and then the band starts coming in, and I just gotta tell you, everything just comes together. Everything is just right about this. The guitar is right. The bass is very apparent, it's very thunderous, and it's complementing the song very, very well. The drums are on point, and Robert Fleischman, he sounds amazing. Now, this is definitely categorized as glam metal, and I can definitely see that, but it has a very heavy metal edge to it, and I just think the entire thing just works so well. Now, these lyrics, much like Kiss, do not leave much to the imagination. I mean, we have, well, I'm a sex shooter, hot teaser, love pleaser, got a lust that kills. We stand united, nobody falls, boys are gonna rock, gonna rock, gonna rock. And I just think it's a really, really thunderous and very, very momentous opener. And like I said, I wouldn't quite call it fast, but it's kind of mid-tempo. But the guitar is just so incredibly electric on it, and it just flows incredibly well. Then we move on to the next track, which again is very very on the nose, I'll say that. It's called Shoot You Full of Love. And this thing, again, begins, it just starts and it just comes out swinging right out of the gate. It starts out with, again, another very metallic, very electric guitar riff. And this thing is a lot more fast than the previous song, Boys Are Gonna Rock. But again, we just listen to these lyrics. Sun sets low and the bitches brew. Love kicks, it makes me black and blue. I want it, I need it, I love it to the core. Backstreet Pussycat, what's behind your door? Shoot you full of love. Yeah. Very sexual to say the least. But again, this one is very, very fast. It's very, very raw and aggressive. Still has kind of some glam influences behind it, but I'm not going to say it's not glam metal, but at the same time, it has traces of heavy metal, and I think it is another very solid track. The sound is good, the production is good, it flows incredibly well, and again, those vocals are just very, very ferocious and aggressive. Sounds a lot like Axl Rose, actually, at least in my opinion. You might disagree with me there, but whatever. Then we come to No Substitute. And this is probably the closest that the album ever gets to producing a ballad. Or what this album seems to consider a ballad. And I gotta be honest, when I first heard this thing, I was like, I'm not really feeling this. Because at the very beginning, there is no instrumentation. It's just Robert Fleischman going, I want you, but you never reply. I can't get through on your line. And then the band starts slowly coming in. We have the drums going doom, 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 doom. But the thing is, the song really starts picking up and everyone just starts coming in at their own pace, and it actually flows really, really well, especially that first verse. I mean, I know this is kind of the closest thing this album is ever going to get to a love song, but I gotta say, it's got such a great rhythm, it got such a great beat to it, and I think Robert Fleischman is a very, very underrated lead vocalist, and so believe it or not, I actually do recommend No Substitute. Then we have Animal, and yes, this does predate Def Leppard by 1 year. They both have a song called Animal. This one came first, and this one, it's also incredibly fast, and the lyrics, I guess, leave a lot more to the imagination, at least compared to the first two, but I definitely do give my full endorsement to Animal. I mean, it's Animal, and like I said, the entire band is just so completely on point. One thing that's very, very significant, I'll say this about Animal, is at the very end, we have a guitar solo that closes out the song. It is absolutely awesome. I mean, Vinnie is just absolutely killing it. It's electric, it's raw, it's aggressive, and it's fast. And right when you think that it's over, when you think the song is about to fade out, the band just starts coming in once more for one last little coda, and they all just play for about a couple of seconds or so, and then the guitar solo continues. And now that I think about it, I can kind of see why Paul Stanley was getting a little bit frustrated. Vinnie Vincent does not know when to stop, but at the same time, I'm not exactly complaining. Then we have the album closer, which is Twisted, 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 Twisted. I probably did that so incredibly horrible, but, you know, cut me some slack here. This is another very, very fast one. It sounds a lot like Animal, it's probably not as fast as Animal. And again, the chorus at least is very, very aggressive, and it keeps doing that kind of little vocal arrangement that happened at the beginning that I attempted to do. But I mean, yeah, it's a solid track and everything. But honestly, I think my favorite from side one is Boys Are Gonna Rock. Ask Me Another Day, it might be Animal, it might be Twisted, it might be Shoot You Full of Love. No Substitute is definitely going to be the weakest song from side one. But even though, like I said, it's kind of bordering on a glammy pop ballad, it's incredibly catchy, and that is a lot more than I can say for your typical glammy pop ballad. So now let's kind of rotate things around right here and go to side B, or side number 2. And unfortunately, guys, this one does not fare quite as well as side 1, but it's still, not without its merits. The first one is Do You Want to Make Love? And this one actually kind of sounds, at least the rhythm does, sounds more like 50s or 60s rock and roll. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Make no mistake, the sound is still very much the same glam metal style that we heard on the previous tracks, but the rhythm, just to me, sounds a lot more like something that might come out of the 50s or 60s. But I mean, it's still a very catchy song. I mean, do you want to make love? Do you want to make love? I mean, I think it's pretty good for what it is, but it's definitely weaker than some of the other stuff that came before it. But I mean, it's good for a listen. But then we have Back on the Streets. And this was another song that was demoed for Creatures of the Night. And it was actually covered by a whole lot of different artists after its release. Most notably, Ace Frehley, of all people. Interesting, but okay. This one is a lot more slow than what came before it, but it still works pretty well, at least good enough, at least. But Vinnie Vincent actually does perform lead vocals, at least on the intro, I believe. And he's not quite as strong of a lead vocalist as Robert Fleischman is, but, he's serviceable. But, yeah, I'm not going to try to sing this one because I would probably mess it up quite a bit because it's kind of a slower, more emotional song, but I mean, I kind of dig it. Then we have I Want to Be Your Victim. And I just got to give credit to the bass intro at the beginning played by Dana Strum. I think it's a very good bass intro. And again, it complements the song very, very well. And I mean, the lyrics may not be anything to write home about. It's just, I wanna be your victim. And I'm guessing the lyrics are incredibly sexual once again. I mean, makes sense. But I Want to Be Your Victim. It's still very, very aggressive and very, very thunderous. I like it. Baby Oh, or Baby Oh Baby. This is definitely the most glammy song on here, and it's definitely the most disposable one. When I listen to this on vinyl and on CD in the car, I don't really skip over anything, but I'll definitely say this. My mind wanders the most during Baby O, and I think it's probably the weakest song on here. Again, it's very disposable. It's very silly also. It's very upbeat, but at the same time, at least when that chorus is going on, when he's singing the chorus, it sounds kind of whiny, and it's definitely the most glam rock song that's on here, which may be a detriment to several people. But then it ends with the title track, Invasion. This is another kind of slower one, well, slow by this record standards, and I think it's pretty solid. I mean, the chorus at least goes, Invasion, that's how you come on to me. Invasion, you were armed with ecstasy. Invasion, your claim to victory. Invasion, your love has conquered me. This one's kind of long, actually. It runs about 7 minutes and change, actually. But at the very end, what happens for like the last 2 minutes or so, we have this little guitar riff that just keeps repeating over and over again. It's like, doo, 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 doo. I did that probably pretty terribly, but I did my best. And there have been rumors, or at least I've heard on the internet, that on the original vinyl release, that guitar outro just continues over and over and over again until whoever is listening picks the needle up. Well, guys, this is an original press, and I gotta tell you, no, it doesn't, okay? It cuts off around the 7-minute 50-second mark, just like the CD does. So that may just be an urban legend, so I am sorry to burst your bubble if that was something that you thought was true. But having said that, I think my favorite from side B, it's either Invasion, I Want to Be Your Victim, or Back on the Streets. I'm probably today going with Invasion, but side A, it definitely has the stronger material, and side A is definitely better than side B. But having said that, this record is absolutely phenomenal. This has actually been rated by, I can't quite recall who said it, but there's been a poll out there where this ranked, I think, the second greatest 80s rock album, second only to Appetite for Destruction. Let that sink in. This album reminds me a lot of Appetite Destruction. It's a metal album that has some glam influences on it, and it just works so incredibly well, and strong songwriting really elevate it up, and I think you do need to check this out. This is a very, very underrated album that does not get the recognition it deserves. Probably because of Vinnie Vincent's notoriously erratic behavior, but that's a different story. So anyways, again, unfortunately, the Vinnie Vincent Invasion did not last very long. They had one more album in 1988 entitled All Systems Go, and I, did not like that one. Mark Slaughter became the lead vocalist on that one, and I really did not care for him too much. And then after the dissolution of the Vinnie Vincent Invasion, some of the remaining members went off to form the band Slaughter, which I also don't really care for. But anyways, this is really where it's at, and I once again give my full endorsement to the Vinnie Vincent Invasion. So anyways, thank you all very much for joining me tonight. Next time, we're going to look at two artists who were fired from the same band. But until then, have a very pleasant evening.